This is a warning. The Grim Reaper of radio, Bob Romanik, with his off-the-record show is about to air. He's probably the nastiest and craziest son of a bitch that you've ever had the misfortune to encounter. The Grim Reaper show will be very controversial and probably quite tasteless. If you are even slightly offended by controversial matter concerning religion, racial matters, politics, or life's problems, you are hereby warned to turn this program off immediately. The Grim Reaper show will be, like his face, very scary and very ugly. At this time, not proudly, but shamefully presents to you Bob Romanik, the craziest son of a bitch on the radio today.
This is Bob Romanik, the Grim Reaper of radio, and you're listening to the all-new KQQZ 1190 AM, America's bi-state voice of freedom, psychopathic radio, and we are proudly the Patriot. And we may have a good day today, I think, here momentarily, I believe. We're going to be able to have an interview with a gentleman who has been on death row for a 1977 killing, actually in Richmond Heights in the St. Louis area, so it brings it close to home. Joseph Paul Franklin. He's made some interviews, but I talked with his people, and for some reason he wanted to give me the last interview. You know what? I don't know, because I'm the Grim Reaper, and that's who's coming to get him. So maybe that's what I'm doing, coming to get him. So if we can have all the technical and legal aspects out of the way, about 10:10 he'll be giving me a call from death row, and he's to be executed this coming morning, actually Wednesday morning at 12:01 a.m. So I will be his last interview, and I think it'll be very interesting. I just want to ask him about the questioning, because if I've got to kiss his ass like the rest of these guys have done, I don't want to talk to him. If we can talk man to man and I can ask some hardball questions, we'll continue the interview. But I promise you, as much as I'd like to say that I was the last man to interview this killer, I am not going to kiss his ass. I'm not going to throw up softball questions, because, number one, he doesn't deserve it. He's a killer. He's a killer. So hopefully that'll work out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we'll take it from there. You know, speaking of throwing softballs, and I've got a little bit of housekeeping, but I'll get to it in a little bit. Somebody called me yesterday and said that Mark Sweet Cakes Kearns was on KMOX. He was being interviewed on KMOX. And the guy that I talked to said, Bob, it was so funny. This Kelly and Hancock, they're filling in for some jock over there, some talk show host at KMOX. And Mark Sweet Cakes Kern, and you guys know why I'm calling Sweet Cakes. You're not that stupid. But anyway, Mark said, you know, I don't want to talk about the Christmas situation, because I've got heat on the other side from some guy, and I'm the guy, but I don't want to talk about it. The whole time they talked about it, you know, they had that all worked out. They had it worked out where Mr. Chairman, we want to talk about, he doesn't give any presents to anybody. He bogarts them from all the people, all of his constituents, and then he takes them down with his hairy-ass old lady to East St. Louis, and takes care of business. Thanks, Fox. I'll tell you, man, I'm about ready to just walk off. You got people that don't know they know what they're doing, but they don't know what the hell they're doing. And it just pisses me off. But anyway, this Kern talked the whole god dang time about this Christmas situation. Nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody wanted to hear that. But he talked about it. So, hey, Mark Kern. Mark Sweetcakes Kern, you idiot. Mark Sweetcakes Kern, you idiot. Why don't you call me? Why don't you call me and talk to me, Bob Romanik, the Grim Reaper? Why the hell do you have to talk to everybody in this world, but Bob Romanik? Why in the hell do you have to do that? We've got Mr. Franklin on the phone. Go ahead, Mr. Franklin.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, can I call you Joe? What can I call you?
Yeah, Joseph, be all right?
Joe, okay. Joseph, you said?
Huh?
You said Joe or Joseph?
Either one. Joseph, be all right?
Okay, Joseph. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
I know that you don't have much time, and I really do appreciate you taking the time out.
Hey, not a problem.
But can I ask you some serious questions? I don't want to disrespect you as a person.
Yeah.
And and I don't want to throw up some softball questions, but it is. It's not, and I got to say this. It's not an honor to talk to you, but it's nice that you would take what little time you have left to give me an interview. And you know what, Joe? I hope what you've done you're going to pay for. But I think I'm going to give you one compliment.
What?
I think you're going to die a man. I talked with some people and they said that you've made peace with yourself and everybody else, and you're going to die a man. So I tell people on my radio show that they can do everything in the world to me and to you. They take our freedoms. I've been in federal prison. They're going to take your life. But one thing.
I hope not. I'm praying that they won't get that opportunity, and so are a whole lot of other people praying for me all over the country. So maybe we'll be able to foil them.
Well, Joe, now what's the situation on in here? Now, I don't want to piss you off. I really don't.
Well,
but,
hey, I'm not easily offended. You can ask me anything you want to.
Hey, but you know what, Joe? Then thank you very much. I'm glad we cleared that up. Hey, okay, here. Now they're going to try to stay your execution because of some drug that's going to hurt you when you die. Is that correct?
Yeah, that pentobarbital. It's similar to phenobarbital, and they use it to euthanize animals.
Right.
And I really don't think it's right. First of all, I'm opposed to any kind of death penalty because the society is it's all administered unfairly, and the system is just so corrupt. They don't have any business executing anybody.
Joe, now we can talk man to man, right? It's just me and you.
Yeah.
Well, how the hell can you say that when all the lives you've taken? Did you think that was fair?
Well, no, but I was mentally ill at the time. That's the thing. See what I'm saying? I was incapable of distinguishing right from wrong.
Joe, did the courts? And again, I don't want to give you a bunch of hell, and I don't want to rain on your parade. But the courts have actually said that you're mentally ill. Then why are they executing you?
That you have to ask them. They've been known to execute people who were mentally ill, so it's really not surprising. My problem is, my situation is that I wasn't given an opportunity to offer any mitigating evidence at the penalty phase of my trial. I was in a catch-22 situation. There have been dozens, if not hundreds, of inmates murdered by guards at the federal penitentiary at Marion, Illinois. I was to be their next victim. I was told in a dream to confess to this shooting, the shooting in Richmond Heights, and I either had a choice of asking them for a death sentence and taking my chance on living a few more years, or being sent back to Marion and murdered, possibly within a few days or weeks by the guards there.
Right. Hey, Joe, let me ask you: Can you honestly say, have you ever killed anyone?
Yeah, I can honestly say that I have. Yeah.
Well, don't you agree? If somebody killed your family, you'd want an eye for an eye?
Well, no, I wouldn't want an eye for an eye because Jesus taught us we shouldn't.
Joe.
Huh?
You said we could talk man to man,
right.
And I'm not a real religious person, but let's don't bring up Jesus in this. You should have thought about Jesus before you did those egregious.
I've got the right to say what I want to, man. I'm a believer in the Bible.
I apologize. All right.
Somebody just because they believe different than you.
Okay, hey, I apologize, but Joe, I apologize for that because you're right. You're a man. You got every right to say what you want. But why didn't you have this feeling with God before, so He had guided you down a different path instead of killing these people?
Well, at that time, I was not religious. I was pretty much more secular than I was religious. I actually thought when I was committing those crimes that I was doing God's will, which shows you how messed up my mind was. That's indication right there that I was insane. Because, who else would go firing on a synagogue? That was not me. That was not my true self. I would never even think of committing a crime like that now.
Joe, I was in federal prison in Leavenworth for 18 months, and it's unbelievable the people that were doing a lot of time start getting religion. And I'm not saying that you're not honest about you finding God, but there's a lot of people who find God just because they want to find a way out of jail. Am I right or wrong?
You're right, and most of them are a bunch of fakes. I've met many of them myself. Christians pretending to be, pretending, and Muslims pretending. You get a lot of them in prison. As soon as they get out, they, you don't hear about anything about their religion anymore. They forget about it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's shallow, I do have a lot of faith in God. I've had a chance to think a lot of things through, and draw a whole lot closer to the Lord since I've been locked up. I've been in solitary confinement pretty much the whole time, and that's very conducive to study. I've been doing a whole lot of studying, reading, chanting, meditating. That's the type of thing I'm into.
Hey, Joe, what do you think? What do you think? And again, I appreciate you to let me give you some hardball questions because I've listened to some interviews and some of these guys were pretty nice to you. But what do you think your punishment should be?
Well, I think my punishment should be. Actually, I've already suffered a whole lot of punishment already.
Yeah, well, Joe, what about the people that lives you took though? You can't forget about the most egregious things that's done in your life.
And I have. I regret that I took those people's lives, but it was something that I did when I had pretty well taken leave of my senses and didn't know what I was doing, and I wished I could go back and have it do over again. But there is nothing I can do about it at this time. Except try to atone for them, apologize to the people. If they want an apology, and I understand that means a whole lot to some people.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, to be honest with you, and we're talking man to man, if you kill one of my family members, I wouldn't want an apology. I'd want to cut your head off and roll it down the courthouse steps.
Yeah, but you sounded kind of gruesome there. I don't think people really want to hear any of that kind of crap.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. Okay, Joe, I apologize to the audience because they don't want to hear my kind of crap. So,
here's the thing. What's your name again now? I forgot.
Bob.
Bob. Hey, Bob. The thing about it is, I'm a big believer in the right of the people to keep and bear arms. I think we should all be armed, that we should train our children from the time you're a person's daughter is 12 years old or younger. She should be trained in firearms, martial arts to defend herself, learn how to use a knife. I think they should pass a law making it legal, because women are the weaker sex, that women can carry a concealed weapon at any time without any kind of permit. They should have that right to protect themselves from crime.
Right. Hey, Joe, can I ask you, did you murder any women on your rampage or rampage that you didn't know what you were doing?
I regret even more than any of the others, to tell you the truth. I really hate the fact, even though the women were involved in interracial relationships, I still regret very much the fact that I took their lives. I wished I could go back and, had it to do over again, or could somehow make amends. But yeah, I have done that, and I wish I hadn't.
Can you tell me, Joe, how many people that you're actually accounted for killing throughout your career before you found God?
Yeah, somewhere around 21 or something like that. Yeah, somewhere around there. 20. I really don't know the exact amount myself.
But if Joe, you put yourself in my shoes and everybody else, and I know you said it was kind of gruesome what I said about chopping off a guy's head if they mess with my family. But don't you understand my feelings and everybody else's feelings? Some of them towards you that hope you rot in hell. You honestly can understand that, can't you?
Yeah, I can understand what people, why people would feel that way. Now, here's the thing, though. I didn't actually consider myself a killer out there, believe it or not. I actually considered myself a vigilante. I felt I was doing the will of God. That really, the people that I was targeting were people that I thought were responsible for most of the crimes, the blacks. And I felt that miscegenation or the mixing of races would eventually lead to lead to genocide. Was basically genocide of the white race. I felt that I was just acting in self-defense, waging a war against an evil system.
Joe, you sound like an intelligent man, and I believe you are. Aren't you boxing them all into one thing? And it's kind of like at this point. And again, I appreciate you letting me be me and you be you, but you're kind of rationalizing that. Don't you take responsibility for any of these at any time?
Yeah, I take responsibility now, but what can I do now, Bob? I mean, tell me what you think I should do to take more responsibility than I already have. Okay. I've already admitted I've done it, and wish that I could turn the clock back and not do it, but it's already done. I'd like to try to help as many people as I can now, and my main goal is to alleviate suffering.
Yeah, Joe, what would you do, or how would you feel if you weren't in your shoes, somebody else was there that had killed your daughter or your son or your husband or your wife? Be honest. Wouldn't you want to see him go down?
With a family member like that, you feel. Oh, you got to go?
No, I wouldn't have to.
Hold up, I was talking to a friend of mine. Hold on just a second, Bob.
Okay. No, we're not going anywhere. I don't think you are either.
All right. Hey, y'all take it easy, all right? Yeah, I know. Hey, I love you, Vicky. No. I love you, Alana. Take care.
For you people listening, we're not going to take a break. We're going to go straight through with this interview.
All right, I'm back, Bob.
Okay, I'm sorry, Joe. Is that some of your family members?
I'm back.
Okay, hey, listen. Joe, I'm going to ask you also, if this comes to pass, and I know you don't want it to, and your family and friends, they don't want it to come to this, would you consider, and I talked to one of my listeners yesterday, would you consider, if you have any, and I'm not saying that disparagingly, I'd say if you have any healthy, usable organs, if they execute you, would you be willing to donate those so you could bring some life back to some people that maybe...
Like I said, Bob, I would be willing to do anything I can to help people, and if I thought that would help somebody, I would be glad to do it. However, when they inject you with this poison and gas, I don't think that that would render any kind of organs unusable for any people out there, because that gas would then get into their system, and it wouldn't be very healthy for them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You brought up a point there, Joe. I'm not a doctor, but and let me ask you. And again, I want to be a little hard on you. Did you ever when you took any of these people's lives? Did you ever look into their face and see death in their eyes?
I don't know what you mean by seeing death in their eyes.
Well, if you stab somebody, you watch them, you watch the pain, you see them. If you shoot somebody from a close distance, did you take anybody's lives, or you were close enough that you could see them go down and see their soul kind of leave them?
The first time, the first killing was, a black man walked up to me, and this is something I had not expected. This is the Madison, Wisconsin case, and I don't want to go into the whole story because it would take too much time.
And neither one of us got that much time, maybe, Joe.
More than you would want to spend on it. But I've told reporters this over and over again, and others. But I was pulling out of a mall there in Madison, Wisconsin, the East Town Mall or something like that, and a car was backing up after I turned after I turned left to go out of the parking lot. And at that point in time, I noticed a black male in the driver's seat along with a female with blonde hair. I beeped at him for pulling out in front of me. He then, to retaliate against me, he began driving about 5 miles an hour to try to make me even madder. And I've got an extremely hot temper. I always have, inherited from my parents, who were both violent and would get in fights with people. Anyway, I then began pushing the horn as hard as I could, beeping at him. He then stopped his car, closed the door, and started walking toward me with a scowl on his face. You hear me?
Uh-huh.
So I thought, well, there's a cop a couple of lanes away. I've got money that I just got from a bank hold up in the trunk of the car. I've got 2 stolen guns in the car from burglaries. So I didn't know what to do as he was walking up. All this stuff was, going through my mind. When he got about 2 feet away, almost to the door, I whipped out this .357 Magnum with a 6-inch barrel, stuck it up the window, and blasted him twice. And he had like a hostile look on his face, walking towards me. And then when he saw the barrel of that gun, his eyes kind of widened, and he got a look of fear on his face. And just a fraction of a second later, I fired the gun, shot him, and then shot him again. Opened the door, walked by him, and went and shot the broad he was with, killed her too, to make a long story short. But all the first ones were all real close up.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the later ones that I was using a rifle from a sniping concealed position.
Uh-huh.
And the reason for that was it's just much easier to get away. There were actually people who witnessed me committing both of those homicides, looking right at me in the mall there.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that the FBI knew that I was connected to that Madison case, but they deliberately ignored it and wouldn't tell the media about it. They wanted to make it look like the only thing I could do was sniping, and I could not shoot anybody close up. As a matter of fact, John Douglas actually told that lie to the media.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, not to cut you short on that, but I know you said you did a lot of these killings because you felt like you were saving society. What the hell does robbing a bank got to do with saving society? Were you in your right mind when you was robbing these banks?
Well, I knew that I wouldn't be able to work at a regular job while I carried out my mission, so I figured that the only way I could finance it would be through banks, holding up banks as I went along, So I would just rob the bank, not because just to get the money so I could spend it on myself, but just to finance my mission.
Right. Hey, Joe, do you honestly? Now, this is me and you talking. Do you honestly feel that you're going to be executed at 12:01 this next morning?
To tell you the truth, I've got signs from both directions. I've got indications that, for example, I just talked to a friend of mine. I consider a friend, a woman named Terry out in Utah, and she told me on the phone yesterday that she saw some sort of vision that I would get a stay. I thought that I was really glad to hear you say that, Terry. It's really encouraging to hear you say that you had that vision. And I mean that might come true too. You hear me?
Yeah. Hey.
Only God knows what's the future will hold for us.
Hey, Joe. To be honest with you, I spent 18 months in federal prison, and if I'd have had to do 18 years or 20 years or 30 years, I think I probably would have welcomed death. After all these years being caged up in prison, aren't you semi-ready in your mind, if it happens, to die? Because I don't think there's anything worse than being caged up like an animal your entire life.
You don't want to what now?
I said, I don't think I was in prison in Leavenworth for 18 months. If
What's your charge, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
Obstruction of justice. They said they lied, that I lied to keep my friends out of jail, and I make a joke about it. It said in the indictment that I lied 150 times, and if what I did was lie, what they said I was lying, actually I beat them because I lied about 650. But, hey, let's get back to you. After all these years, Joe, how many years have you actually been incarcerated?
You really don't have time to get used to it when you spend just a year and a half.
No, I understand that. I'm saying, how many years have you been incarcerated?
33 years.
Okay, don't you think at this point that if you don't get executed and you got to do another 20 or 25, wouldn't you kind of welcome death at this point?
Oh, the reason being is because it seems like the time just zips by. I mean, it's just amazing how it flies by, and I've heard others say the same thing who've been incarcerated for many years, but it's basically similar. I mean, I've been in solitary confinement the whole time. I got stabbed 15 times a couple of days after I went out to the general population in Marion. So I've had to stay locked down the whole, pretty much my whole bit. And it's similar to the lifestyle of a monk living in a monastery somewhere, living in a little room, focusing just on meditating, praying, chanting, studying. That's basically what I spend my time doing. And I don't have a job or work to do, but I do a whole lot of working out and exercise every day to substitute for that, to keep my body in shape. Hey. And physical activity also strengthens one's mind, because your body is connected to your mind. So I do a whole lot of working out, real vigorous workout. I don't cut myself any slack in my workouts just because I'm 63 years old. I do a lot more working out than a lot of the young guys do. Yeah. Hey, Joe,
have they given you your menu for your last meal? Are they that serious?
The correction, Mr. Phillips, Dale Phillips, who is the correctional case manager here, asked me a week ago. He said, "What would you like for your last meal?" I said, I think that is absolutely preposterous that an inmate would want to, on the eve of his execution, have a feast on, be feasting on a meal there. I happen to be fasting all day, not eating accepting any trades from the officers. I'd rather take that money that they were going to spend on my last meal and give it to some child who's hungry, or some homeless person out there. That would be a much better thing to do with that food, Yeah. So I ain't eating anything, no last meal. I'm fasting the whole day.
Hey, Joe, to be on a little bit lighter side, I often thought that if I did something egregious enough to be put to death for, I'd take my last meal like my girlfriend does. Takes her about 8 hours to eat. I'd take about 3 or 4 days. That could probably lengthen the stay, couldn't it?
Huh?
That could probably lengthen the stay if you had a big meal and it took you 6, 8, 10 hours to eat. Do they give a time limit on the meals on a person?
I haven't asked him on that. I ain't asked him about that, but you say it takes your girlfriend 8 hours to eat one meal?
Yeah, she sits there. So I'm saying that may be a good ploy for you if you do, in fact.
Yeah.
If you're going,
keep postponing it,
as long as you could eat, but you'd probably kill yourself with all the food in your.
Way I'd go, so I don't want to take a chance on that.
But you're not seriously. You're not going to have you haven't asked for anything for your last meal.
I don't want any kind of last meal.
Could you have got anything you wanted, or what did they? Are they being pretty nice to you when this is all over?
He was telling me, we allow you to people doing it like that. Timothy McVeigh eating quarts of ice cream and all that crap. That just made me sick to hear about that. Like I say, the food could be given to a hungry child. That would be a much better way to, a better thing to do with food. Because there's so many homeless people and hungry people right here in this in Washington County too. Yeah. And so it's just, I just told them, no, I don't want any kind of last meal.
Hey, Joe, have you talked with any of the family members of any of your victims?
No, I'm all right. Yep, positive. Yeah. Hey, Bob.
Yeah. Have you talked with any of your family members of any of the victims?
I sure have, Bob. As a matter of fact, I've talked to one of my granddaughters, Brittany. She's just turned 17 years old for the first time a few nights ago, and she's just one of the sweetest things you can imagine. And I've got a granddaughter a year older than her who's also married and got a child. So I'm actually a great-grandpa. And, one of the things I don't like about being, this situation, I'd like to be able to at least write to my grandkids, send them gifts and stuff like that, every now and then, mentor them, give them advice if they need it.
Right.
And I've spent a whole lot of time, I've not wasted my time since I've been locked up, man. I have been studying, trying to improve my mind. I probably am better educated. As a matter of fact, the chaplain, Herbert Conley at the Potosi Correctional Center, went to seminary. He's got a PhD and a doctorate. He told me one time, Joseph, I can tell by talking to you, you're actually more well-read than I am and have more knowledge,
Right. Hey, Joe, let me cut you a little bit on that. You say you like talking to your grandkids, and that gets to me because I love children. But and again, I got to be a little straightforward about it. What about all the families that you took, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, the potential grandmothers, going down the road? How do you think they feel?
I imagine they feel pretty bad about it.
Yeah, I know, but then again, I'm not trying to give you hell on.
We got a similar situation. Two wrongs don't make a right. They want to, because somebody was mentally ill and misguided and killed somebody, they want to take away a child's grandpa now, so they can't ever talk to them anymore or write to them.
When did you, Joe? When were you diagnosed mentally ill, and now when were you diagnosed that you're healthy and mentally healthy?
Well, Dr. Dorothy Lewis from New York diagnosed me with serious mental illnesses back in 1995 when I was at St. Louis County Jail. I've been diagnosed at Potosi Correctional Center by Angeline Stanislaus, the psychiatrist there, as with a serious case of obsessive-compulsive disorder, and that's got a whole bunch of symptoms, by the way, including one, voices telling you to kill people. So that alone, man, is a sign there that I was suffering from serious mental illness on the streets. I got into self-help and self-improvement books on my own at the federal penitentiary at Marion during the late 80s, and realized that by reading books by psychiatrists and psychologists and learning everything I could about mental illness, I could cure myself. This is called bibliotherapy, and they've proven it works. You can actually think your way out of mental illness. And the way I am now, you would not, if you had known me from the streets, it would seem like you're talking to a different person. You would not even recognize me the way I am now compared to what I was then. Hey,
if you make it out alive, send me that book, because I've been mentally ill for a long time, but I didn't get quite to your level. But
yeah, you probably weren't beat up and abused like I was either when you were a boy growing up. You probably weren't physically and emotionally abused and half starved. And then no, Joe, back up. I was mentally abused because we were poor and people talked down on us, and I did starve. And I'm not trying to give you a hard way to go, Joe, but in your situation, there's about half the world grew up that way, and they didn't become violent. What do you think was your turning point, actually? Background to say that half the world grew up that way. If that was true, then half the world would be out there committing murders. No. So much anger and hatred in a child. And then I was always picked on when I was a kid in school because I was so little and small for my age. So I got kind of a double whammy, and it does build up a lot of anger and hate in a child. And I don't think I've ever heard of anybody as mean as my mother was. She would take a pot of boiling water. And take it and pour it on a little terrier dog. Us kids there was a little dog in the yard one day, one of these little terriers with the tail sticking up in a circle. And, we were all petting him out there. I was maybe about 10 years old, 11. And my mother, unbeknown to us, went into the kitchen and put a pot with water on the stove. She waited till it got to the boiling point and poured it right on top of that little dog without any warning.
Yeah.
And he ran screaming off. you know, why would anybody want to do something like that to a dog unless they were just flat out sadists?
Yeah. Well, no, I agree with you, Joe. Can I ask you, Joe, because I've talked with some people, I told them that you were nice enough to give me maybe your last interview. When will you get prepared to meet your maker?
Well, I've been preparing for that for many years.
No, I mean physically today or tonight. At what point is the countdown start?
I think around midnight.
Okay, so at midnight, that's when they're supposed to do the lethal injection. When do they prepare you? You know, when do you talk with your people last, and when do you walk down the last mile, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I've been trying to get some information from Mr. Phillips on that, and I haven't been able to get any information about it. He won't tell me anything about, the proceedings leading up to that time. I really don't know. I've never met an inmate who's had to go through that. I've met, Nunley was over here for a while, and he went up right here in close supervision where I'm at now before he got a stay.
Right.
And they sent him back to Potosi Correctional Center.
How many people are with you there on death row?
I'm the only one. I'm the only inmate at ERDC Bonterra on death row. I mean, there's a bunch of them. They're all the death row inmates are all kept at Potosi Correctional Center until they get close to their date. Then they move from Bonterra where they're executed.
Okay. You know what? I think you misunderstood what I said a little bit earlier, Joe. I had asked, and I understand you talking about your grandchildren, and I'm sure you're proud of, and I'm sure they're great people. But I asked you, actually, have you ever talked with any of the family members of the victims that you killed?
The family members of the victims?
Yeah.
But, that's an interesting question that you asked. And, I have not had the opportunity to meet with any of these family members. I would love for them to come visit me up here. If they would like an apology, I would be happy to give them an apology and talk to them in a civil way. But none of them have ever contacted me saying, hey, we'd like an apology. And I hate to contact them myself because, number one, they might be scared or they think I'm stalking them. So I really don't want to make the first move and frighten anybody. You hear me?
Right. No, I'm listening to you.
I would love to be able to give them closure if they wanted it by apologizing to them. And I understand that actually does mean a lot to the victim of a crime if they get an apology from the perpetrator. And I'm, happy, be glad to do that if I could. But I just don't have. They're not here. I don't know, why they haven't tried to contact me.
Well, Joe, let me tell you, to be honest, and again, I appreciate you letting me be candid, and I appreciate you being a stand-up man about it. But hey, listen, if you kill one of my family members, the only reason I'd want to come into contact with you is to blow your head off, and you can understand where I'm coming from, can't you?
Yeah. Well, how many family members you got, Bob?
I've got quite a few.
Yeah. All right. Look. The thing you should focus on, man, is not if anybody killed your family, but you should be proactive. Make sure they're all armed and can defend themselves to ever prevent that from ever happening. Then you won't have to worry about retaliating and seeking vengeance. You see what I'm saying? Everybody should. That's why I say I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. And, children as young as 12 should all learn marksmanship. They should learn physical, martial arts, learn how to physically defend themselves, not only against any adults, but, a lot of kids, their lives are ruined when they're bullied and beat up at school by other kids.
Yeah.
That's a bad thing. They're bullying. And I wish, if I had not been bullied at school, that would have been a whole lot, made me a whole lot, meant a lot to me anyway,
But Joe, and I appreciate that, and I'm going to get on Larry Flint in a minute, but it just kind of gets in my crawl, and maybe you are as sincere as the day is long. Maybe you are. But you know how many people hide behind...
I've got no reason. I ain't the shallow type of person who will lie about stuff like that.
I understand, but you have to understand me and my listeners, and we've got 3 million potential listeners out there listening to you. You got to understand how a lot of people at home listening think, hey, that's a poor excuse because everybody could use that excuse. You understand where we're coming from, though, don't you?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
Hey, listen, this deal with Larry Flint.
Uh-huh.
Why were you mad at him, and why did you shoot him?
Well, as I've already told, many people, I just had this thing about miscegenation, mixing of the races, and he was publishing some photos that promoted that.
Yeah. Are you against pornography?
Well, I'm not so much against that alone. It's just the interracial stuff that would ticking me off. You know.
Yeah. Were you ever a member of the Ku Klux Klan?
I was just for a short period. Yeah, I joined Robert M. Shelton's United Klans of America, but it was so infiltrated. That was, by the way, was the largest Klan organization in the country, headquartered in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and became an organizer for the Klan. But it was just so infiltrated by the FBI. They had so many informants. It was just...
Hey, Joe, you were smart enough to get out of there, though, weren't you?
I got out of there quick, man. I ain't kidding you.
you weren't, and I'm making a semi-joke, but you weren't mentally ill when you knew that FBI was in there. Your ass was gone.
Well, my ass wasn't gone either, because I just dropped out and realized that it wasn't a good thing to... actually, to tell you the truth, organizations like that's proof right there in the sense that you're mentally ill if you would join the Ku Klux Klan, because it's basically what they call part of the lunatic fringe, and a lot of the people and members of the Klan are mentally ill.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, did you change your name for a Nazi? Did you change your name to honor a Nazi group?
To honor one of the Nazi leaders over in Germany, the minister of propaganda, who was Dr. Paul Joseph Goebbels. Yeah, I changed my name.
What was your real name?
James. I was born James. My family called me Jimmy. Clayton Vaughn Jr. is my full name, first name.
Well, how come at the end of the road, whatever direction you go, how come you haven't changed your name back legally?
I'm thinking I was before all this came up and I got a date, I was thinking just a few months ago of having my name changed back to James Clayton Vaughn Jr. I like that name and I would like to go back to using it.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not something I'm concerned about at this point in time, but I've been planning that for quite a while, months and months back.
Yeah. You know what, I don't know, Joe, and I'm not trying to make fun of it. I don't know if I really believe in the death penalty, but my problem is if it was one of my family members or one of my listeners' family's members, even if they didn't believe in the death penalty up to that point, they would. So you can see why you're not getting a lot of support on one end of the spectrum, can't you?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, there's as many people that want to save you. There's probably that many more that want you to go.
Yeah, can you hold on for just a second, Bob?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Take care of business. I think I got a little bit more time than he does.
Oh, yeah, I can do that, Dan. Hey. All right. Hey, Bob?
Yeah.
I just got a message from the sergeant here that my attorney, Jennifer Herndon of St. Louis, wants me to give her a call, so I'm going to have to kind of cut this short. Do you hear me?
Yeah, okay. Listen, Joe, we'll let you go. You know what, honestly, when I first knew I was going to interview you, I was going to give you all kind of hell. I really was, because I think it's kind of egregious that somebody to take people's lives. But I hope what you're saying about you've changed, I hope you're sincere about that. And I'm not going to pass judgment on you either way. But actually, at this point, and don't take it wrong, I appreciate you letting me interview you, but I actually, at this point, I think I pity you more than I hate a person like you, because, maybe you have changed. But at the end of the day, Joe, we have to pay the piper for what we've done. And, I can't say I wish you the best, but I really don't wish you the worst.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, man. It's been nice talking to you, Bob.
Okay, Joe. Thanks for the time, buddy. Yeah. Thanks for the time. Yeah, you've been listening to me. If you've been listening to the interview with Joseph Paul Franklin, he's ready to be executed at 12:01 tonight. And honestly, I was going to say what a rotten, no-count, low-life son of a bitch he was. And he really is, but I guess it's not for me to say that. You could hear in his voice that he's scared, he's ready to go, but it kind of really pisses me off, and there wasn't no sense getting into a fighting match, a pissing match with him. But you notice, and when I was a policeman and a homicide detective, when people do things, it's never their fault. And I think these years, he's just got a whole scenario, and he's delusional because you hurt him. Hey, you know what? Let the kids have guns, and I want to do good for the community. I should live. And I personally at this point, and he's not listening, because I don't want to make his life any more miserable than it's probably going to be at 12:01. But I don't give a damn about him not having food when he was younger. I don't give a damn about him being bullied. There's half this population that didn't have enough to eat that were bullied, but they didn't turn out that way. And it really pisses me off when somebody uses that mental illness. Now, he wasn't mentally ill to know to rob a bank so he could eat. He wasn't that stupid. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. This is Bob Romanik. The Grim Reaper of radio. And you're listening to the all-new KQQZ 1190 AM, America's bi-state voice of freedom, and proud to be your First Amendment and all-American station. Psychopathic radio, and we just heard from one, and we are always the Patriot.
From KQQZ 1190 AM, St. Louis, Missouri, USA, you're listening to Bob Romanik, the Grim Reaper of radio.
This is Bob Romanik, the Grim Reaper of radio, and you're listening to the all-new KQQZ 1190 AM, America's bi-state voice of freedom, your guardian of the First Amendment, psychopathic radio, and I'm not killing anybody, and we are proudly the Patriot. I honestly believe it was appropriate for me to be the last one to interview that gentleman, because I am the Grim Reaper of radio, of course, before he's executed. And I was asked by his handler not to tell him my name was the Grim Reaper, because I guess he's a little suspicious. But, we got about 35, 40 minutes of good interview, and I hope it was interesting. And again, I was going to go off on him, but I figured there's no sense of doing that. He was decent as he could be by taking the time to give us a little insight. But as you know, they always blame somebody else. And I tell you what, it was interesting just to hear him blame everybody else. It was society's fault. It wasn't his fault. Say, hey, you plantation Negroes below the hill, you think I'm a racist? When you sneer at me, I don't blow your head off. I'm not a racist. That's a racist. I'm not a racist. When you sneer at me, I sneer back. When you call me a name, I call you a name. Now, if you pull out a gun and start shooting, now I would do the same. But now, don't call me a racist. You call me a crazy son of a bitch. But after this, don't ever call me a racist. But Joseph Paul Franklin, 63. Hey, we've got all kind of callers, but I don't think we're going to be able to get them today. We're going to have to, we'll carry this conversation over tomorrow. 63. And did you hear him say, oh, I want to be around for my grandchildren? Well, and you heard what he said. Well, I'll give him an apology. Actually, I'd give him something and blow his head off. But guys like that, you got to understand. I mean, they're delusional at best, because they've been in those cells for that many years, and being in confined for 18 months. I can tell you, it ain't nice. 18 years, I'd have been crazier than I am. And at that point, and I mean it, I thought about it. If I got 20, 30, 40 years in what I experienced in Leavenworth, I'd get a razor and slit my throat. And I'm being serious as a heart attack, because that's not living. That's not living. But for some reason, everybody puts that self-preservation mode in, and they want to live. Hell, if you're living for nothing, why live? If you're living for nothing, why live? But again, we've got callers. We're not going to be able to take any callers. We're running out of time. But we will talk about Joseph Paul Franklin, about the interview tomorrow. And I got to say, hopefully, they won't give him another stay, because, he talked about saving money. Did you understand how delusional he was? Talks about saving money for his last dinner to feed a poor kid. What about all the investigative money it took to get him, to find him, the FBI money? What about everything it's cost him to house him for this 30, 40 years? And he's that delusional to say, oh, the last $2, $3, I want to feed a poor kid. I don't know if he's got religion or not, but I'd be a little suspect of that. And again, I'm not anybody's maker, and I'm not anybody's judge, jury, and executioner, but I hope this is put to rest, and he's put to rest at 12:01 today. Belleville Mayor, and we'll get to this tomorrow too. Belleville Mayor gets robbed in Belleville, Illinois. Unbelievable. How the hell do you get robbed? And I want to say this, a quick disclaimer. I hope and I'm glad that Rita Eckert is safe, and I mean that sincerely. On my son's life, I mean that sincerely, that she was safe on this incident, because as bad as I dislike Mark Eckert and Mark Sweetcakes Kern, I don't want anything to happen, not only to their family, I don't want anything bad to happen to them. Politically bad I want it to happen to. But Mrs. Eckert gets her purse grabbed, and he goes running after him. And then she says, as they're grabbing her purse, "Hey, what are you doing? They stole your purse, you idiot. Mrs. Eckert, you can't be that stupid. They stole your purse." That's what they did. And you have to ask them as they're grabbing your purse and running down the street. You got to ask them, and this is in quotes, "Hey, what are you doing?" You know what? I think they're probably making moonshine, Mrs. Eckert. You know what they're doing? They grabbed your purse, and like an idiot, and I have to say this, and I don't bring anybody's wives into the situation, their family, unless it's needed to be, and it's needed to be. Mrs. Eckert, why the hell would you risk your life for a couple credit cards? And even more than that, why would you want your family, your husband, even though he's a no good son of a bitch, not to have a wife? Why would you want your children not to have a mother? Why the hell would you do something stupid like that? And then Mark Eckert, the mayor, said when his wife's frantic call, he was sitting at Mariachi's restaurant on South Illinois. Was you with the senorita, or were you having a margarita, Mayor Eckert? You're sitting there with some employees scoffing down some margaritas, probably with some senoritas, and your wife is getting rolled by her flower shop in the 200 block of West Main in Belleville. And see, Mark Eckert, just thank God, if there is one, that your wife wasn't killed, because you tell everybody, and you've got your wife convinced that Belleville is safe. Belleville is not safe. It hasn't been safe for the last 10 years. And an idiot like you, Mark Eckert, will tell people it's safe. They let their guards down. And when they let their guards down, you see what happens. You see what happens. And you know what, Mark Eckert? If you hadn't been driving your police car around, I bet that police car was at Mariachi's while you were having a margarita with a senorita. If that car would have been out on the street, maybe, just maybe, it could have been patrolling around the flower shop, and this situation never would have happened. So you people got to know, if the mayor's wife of the city of Belleville gets rolled, and he's always around driving that police car, they know who he is. Nobody's safe in this town. I'll bet you he's got a different play on it now. But they've got one of the guys, and I'm happy for him. But I'm happy that everything worked out okay. But what a way not to do something when a situation like this occurs. You know, and Mrs. Eckert, I got to say again, I'm happy that you're okay. But I think you're an idiot the way you handle the situation. The only one worse of handling situations than you at this point after reading this is your husband, who was destroyed, just about single-handedly destroyed this town of Belleville, this once great, safe town of Belleville. But in parting, Mrs. Eckert, let me give you a little bit of advice. When you see somebody, 4 or 5 people coming up to you, and you see these thugs running down the street. And now see, one last question. It doesn't say what color they are. And I had a white guy tell me yesterday, that means they're black. The newspaper don't want to put it in. And I guess maybe they're right. I don't know. And that's not a racist statement for me. That's a real statement. That's a racial statement that I'm making. Maybe it was black. I don't really know, but this is what the white guy said. But let me tell you what, Mrs. Eckert, when guys come up grab your purse, take off running. You don't have to say, hey, what are you doing? You don't have to say, hey, guys, what are you doing? They're robbing you. They're robbing you. Get some sense. But I believe if you had any sense, you wouldn't have married that idiot, Mark Eckert, that you're married to. This is Bob Romanik. The Grim Reaper of radio. And you've been listening to the all-new KQQZ 1190 AM, America's bi-state voice of freedom. As you have heard all hour, we are psychopathic radio, and we are really the Patriot. Hey, we appreciate all the callers. We're going to take this up tomorrow, and everybody, our lines are jammed. We want to get everybody a say, so we'll do that tomorrow. We apologize, but we just ran out of time. So here's what we'll do. We're going to continue to expose, humiliate, disintegrate, and alleviate this great country of these rotten bastard politicians, and we will continue to expose them, drag them, and bury them forever. Politically, of course, right here on the dark side.
They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats. And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha.
The Patriot.
Your First Amendment and All-American Station. A division of Insane Broadcasting. Renegade Radio.
KQQZ, St. Louis.